Joyride 1957, Chapter 19. James pulled his star chief into the Texarkana Community College parking lot, shifted into neutral, and set the brake. Noticed the gas gauge was showing about 1/4 full. He grabbed his bag and headed for the Texarkana Community College entrance. He located the Palmer Library and went inside. Again, he asked for the local section and was escorted by a petite Asian girl to that area. He first went to the men's room to relieve himself, then sat down at a large table. As he was selecting a few books, he noticed a rather short gentleman in a gray suit seated at the other end of that table. His nose was in a rather large book. James sat down and began combing through the books he had chosen. He reviewed the history of the Texas and Pacific Railroad. It was created in 1871 to establish a southern transcontinental railroad between Marshall, Texas and San Diego, California. Marshall was some 70 miles south of Texarkana. The railroad never reached California, but instead hooked into the Southern Pacific Railroad near El Paso, Texas, some 10 years after its creation. There was mention of hauling government shipments, but nothing that stood out, certainly nothing of a secretive or fragile nature. He now looked through the book of languages and found a diagram demonstrating the language of the rune. The rune alphabet was used to write various Germanic languages and, according to the author, began its use in about the 2nd century AD. The rune language was used in Central and Northern Europe, dying out about 700 AD in Central Europe and 1100 AD in the North, with Latin taking over. He stared at the rune alphabet and then remembered the marks on his stones. His smaller stone had the rune that appeared to be an L, and the larger one had 2 letters, an O that had 2 legs, and a lightning bolt shaped like an S. He had seen all too many of those in Europe. It was the exact symbol of Hitler's SS units. He looked over the alphabet in the book and decided that the L-like rune on the stone was in fact probably an L. The S on the other stone was probably an S, and the 2-legged O likely an O. So he had L and SO or OS. Whatever, he said out loud, threw his hands in the air, realizing he was getting nowhere. "You okay, son?" the man across the table asked in a heavy Texas accent. "Yes, no, yes." The gentleman got up and came around the table. "Howdy, my name is Ross." James stood. "Mine's James. Sorry to interrupt you, sir." "No problem, son. My work seems to be as frustrating as yours." "What do you do?" James asked, suddenly wishing he hadn't. "I'm working on some information for the government. It's classified." "Well, kind of," the man said. "And you?" "I'm working on it's a research project for the government as well." "Classified?" Ross asked. "Yes, it's dealing with some lost government property," James said, realizing he and his new friend knew he was lying through his teeth. "Well, good. I hope you find what you're looking for." "I will, I'm sure of it. Just have to be patient. You know how it is," James said, half chuckling. "Listen, would you like to go for dinner? My treat." "Oh, no, I couldn't trouble you. I got a couple more stops today, but thanks anyway," James said. "Good porterhouse and some port might clear your mind," the gentleman urged. "Thanks again, but I must be going," James said. As he stood, Ross noticed a book open to the rune alphabet and some scribbling on James' paper. "Well, nice meeting you. Good luck in your research," he said. "You as well, sir." With that, James prepared to leave the library. As James left the front of the building, Ross went to the payphone, deposited a dime, and dialed. "Jeff, is that you?" Ross asked when the line picked up. "Yeah, boss. What can I do for you?" Jeff asked. "I need a tail on a guy. He's at the Palmer Library. He may be headed north." "What's he driving?" Jeff asked. White 57 Star Chief. May be headed north. Check in with me down the line." "Sure, boss." The line went dead. James went to the library lot, but his white Pontiac was nowhere to be found. He looked everywhere. Finally, he sighed. Oh well. He noticed a black Coupe de Ville parked right in front of the library. It was a 57 with red leather, and when he opened the door, he recognized the new car's smell and aroma he liked. He hot-wired the Cadillac and started right up. The plastic was still in the seats, put the shift lever into reverse, turned the air conditioning on high, and shifted into drive and drove smoothly out of the lot. This is more like it, he said aloud. Ross exited the building just as his brand new Coupe de Ville was leaving the lot. He went back inside, put another dime in the phone, and called Jeff. Jeff, the guy just left the parking lot in my new de Ville. Want me to call the police? Jeff said. No. Find him and tail him. I want to know where he's going and who he's seeing. Have that crook over at the caddy dealer send me over another de Ville pronto. Any particular color, boss? Jeff said. The expletives came in a wave. Jeff hung up. Jeff called the dealer. Yellow will be fine, he said, and hung up, went out to his 56 yellow and white Mercury Montclair Sun Valley with a sunroof, climbed in, and headed downtown. James was eating up his new ride as he headed across town. He crossed State Line Avenue on 5th, turned right on Beach Street, and parked the de Ville in front of a large church. The sign read St. Edward's Catholic Church and listed Mass times. He got out, walked up the steps, and entered the rather cool sanctuary. He noted the Stations of the Cross along the walls and walked up to the front of the church. He crossed himself and knelt. Soon he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see a priest dressed in black standing behind him. Can I help you, son? The priest said in a rather deep voice. No, Father, I just came to view your church, James said. For some reason he was steadily lying today. He thought maybe he should go to the confessional, but the priest steadied him. I recognize you. You're James, aren't you? The soldier you and your parents used to attend. James was speechless. I'm glad you returned. Will you be staying in Texarkana? No, Father, I'm just visiting the area and decided to do some reminiscing. The church is more beautiful than I remember, James said. He stared at the communion cups on the wooden table in front of him. Would you care to take communion? No, I better not. I've done some things, James said. God forgives all, the priest said. Maybe another time. Tell me, where do you get such beautiful gold cups and dishes? James said. Oh, these, the priest said, pointing. They're imported. Actually, they're made by a company very near Vatican City. Were you in Italy? No, just England and France. After we liberated it, I was able to tour Paris. What a marvelous city, James said, memories welling up. Sometime you must see Rome. It is even more inspiring than Paris, the priest said sincerely. I'll have to do that. I'm on a research assignment now, Father. Would it be possible to see my parents' graves? Surely. This way. The priest took him out to the little cemetery and pointed out James' parents' markers. He then left James to be alone with his thoughts, returned inside and made his way to his office. He sat down in his large leather chair and picked up the phone. Operator, I'd like to place a long-distance call to Key West, Florida. James spent about 10 minutes in his parents' company. Then, seeing the priest had not returned, exited the little cemetery, climbed back into the black de Ville, and drove back to State Line Avenue. He turned south and after some blocks turned right onto Rosie Street. He saw it on the right and pulled up in front of the house he knew as home. He noticed the front window was broken. The place looked deserted. There were no cars and no one appeared to be living there. The place was still his, but he was aware that abandoned homes were often occupied. He walked up the cracked concrete walk. The grass was filled with weeds and appeared dead. He knocked on the door, but there was no response. All the neighbors' houses seemed lived in. He turned the knob and it opened. He went through the porch into the living area. Everything was empty, but appeared to be in reasonable condition. He then went through the hall to the back bedrooms. He first peered in his parents' room. There was a picture of them still hanging a kilter on the wall. then went into his room. It was empty, but the wallpaper was as he remembered. After several minutes, he went back out on the front porch and sat on the rail. He noticed some children playing in the street and an elderly woman rocking on her porch across the street. He sat and just stared. Thought after thought flew into his mind and just as quickly flew away. Finally he noticed a woodpecker land on the tree close to him in front of the yard. It began hammering away at the bark. It was determined to free a chunk of bark from the large oak. He watched for several minutes as the woodpecker, he judged to be a hairy from its markings, kept pounding away. It must have been 10 minutes, but finally the piece of bark fell away. The woodpecker gave a screech and flew into the evening air. Thought for a bit longer, then made a vow that if he ever completed this awful research project, he would come back and restore his house. That bird can do it, I certainly can. He pumped the air, saluted Mr. Hairy Woodpecker, got into the DeVille, hot-wired it, and eased the Cadillac onto State Line Avenue. He stopped at a Gulf station for gas, that is Ethel. This machine deserved the best money could buy. Grabbed a hot dog and a Coca-Cola as well, and brought the big black Cadillac up to speed on Highway 59, heading north. He glanced at his map. Should be in Havner by 10, he said as he turned the air on full. It was a sweltering 90 in East Texas that day. Soon he began singing in a full baritone voice his favorite tune. When Johnny comes marching home again.